On Wednesday, January 15th, scores of business owners and people involved in Vermont's tourism industry converged on the State House in Montpelier to press legislators to increase the state's funding support for marketing and promoting the state to outside visitors. While Vermont's tourism budget has been flatlined at roughly $3 million for the past few years, other neighboring states in New England have found ways to bolster theirs, leaving Vermont now fifth out of the 6 New England states when it comes to investing in this sector. The tourism industry representatives are hoping to see the legislature find a way to boost that current total by $500,000. Meanwhile, the state has also seen a leveling off of the number of tourists and the amount of money they are spending on rooms, meals, recreation, shopping, and services. That's still a considerable amount, nearly $3 billion, and the industry directly employs more than 30,000 Vermonters. But there could be more, industry advocates, led by the State Chamber of Commerce and a newly formed legislative caucus, are saying. The caucus includes several local representatives, Kathleen James of Manchester, Kelly Bayala of Londonderry, and Laura Sibilia of Dover. Representative Heidi Sherman of Stowe organized the day for tourism business owners to come and argue their case to the legislature last year, and followed up this year with a second Day Under the Dome, which saw a much larger turnout of people involved in the tourism business. A morning of testimony from several individuals involved in the tourism industry before the House Commerce Committee got the day started. One of those testifying was Brian Margiotto, the president of the Bennington Area Chamber of Commerce and a co-owner of the Inn at Manchester.
The request we put forth before you today comes in the form of a $500,000 increase to the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing promotional budget. But I believe it's more than that. I mean, we can apply lots of buzzwords and key demographic opportunities to it, but this is rural economic development at its best. It is working for the people that are here, and it's helping us to grow our state and grow the opportunities before us. To me, there is no question that a 16% increase in spending is money well spent. There are going to be many people who believe this still falls short of where the state needs to be. But when we talk about assisting one of the cornerstones of our economy, there can be no question that we have to try and try and try harder.
Some of the legislators had some probing questions for some of the presenters.
What happens when we face a warmer climate where we have fewer trees or a less vibrant foliage? What happens when we have more storms like Irene that knock out 99% of our covered bridges? And so we have major infrastructure problems. We have a changing culture and climate in this state. And I think that is a big contributor of maybe why people aren't coming in. And I'm not entirely sure if increasing marketing is going to fix it if we don't have farms to bring people here. So I'm curious, as everybody's probably aware, and probably folks would argue that increased taxes in this state make it difficult for people not to want to live here, which is going to contribute to increasing our tax revenue so that we can contribute towards our tourism fund. What are we willing to take money away from to support more tourism economy in this state? Because we're not asking for new revenue streams. We're not asking for a new tax structure. So where does this fit in with supporting the culture and the identity of our state and really fostering economic development?
That's a loaded question. I mean, do you want to dip into the whole education spending?
Absolutely.
Amy Spear is the State Chamber of Commerce's Vice President of Tourism.
Yes, when you're looking at the market share for visitor spending for the state of Vermont over the last 5 years, we've actually lost some of our market share compared to other New England states. So we feel that it's very important for the money to be spent attracting visitors from out of state. The Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing does an excellent job with the limited funds that they currently have available. The fact that our meals and rooms revenue grows by about 5% every year means that they're being highly effective with the marketing that they do. And they have a very healthy mix of earned, owned, and paid media that comes out of the department, and I would expect that they would be able to amplify their messaging that they have. Part of the department's role is to amplify the story of Vermont's most iconic experiences, and with really limited funds, we're getting muted by other states like New Hampshire. So with additional funds, our voice can be louder at a larger level.
One of the questions hovering overhead was where the money would come from, with the state budget already tight and many other claims being made by other groups for more financial support. We asked Representative Kathleen James, a member of the Tourism Caucus, what she thought of the ask.
There's no such thing as an easy ask. There are a lot of competing demands, and I think everybody knows that. But we are making a very strong case here today, and we'll continue to make the case throughout the session that when you invest in tourism marketing for the state of Vermont, we all benefit. When you bring folks here to the state who might not otherwise have come, or you encourage them to return, it benefits our businesses, not just businesses, in the tourism industry. Obviously, it benefits inns and restaurants and shops, but then if you support an inn, they in turn hire plumbers and tradespeople to keep up their facility.
Representative Sherman, who was instrumental in organizing the day, gave us her takeaway.
So right now, we've really started this effort prior to the session so that people are talking about it right at the beginning of the session. Right now, we're awaiting the governor's budget next year. We've been advocating to him to increase this investment in tourism by $500,000. So we'll see if that happens. We're hopeful. But regardless, we still need the legislative bodies to support it. So we're going to work with this committee, policy committee, to encourage appropriations committees. And all of us, as we have a tourism caucus now, so all of us will be advocating for this kind of investment as well. And we're hopeful this year. So we'll see.
There were several North Shire representatives attending the day's events. One of them was Bob Stannard, who put the issue into some historical perspective, recalling similar efforts from his days as a state legislator back in the 1980s.
And the more things change, the more they stay the same. We were having this same conversation when I was on the Appropriations Committee back in the 80s. The state has always struggled with funding tourism. I'm not sure why, because there is a payback. I think from a legislative standpoint, the issue for them is quantitative. How do we know how much we're getting back for the investment that we're making? And of course, it's up to the advocates to show how that happens. I did talk with a legislator this morning who said it shouldn't be so much about tourism as it should be about rural economic development. And that really hit me. It's like, duh, that's exactly what this is. It's not just money for the rich outlets in my town or the ski areas. That's not what this is about. It's about investing in Vermont in a program that actually works, that generates a lot of money, and that in turn can be used for rural economic development in the state of Vermont.
A press conference concluded the day's events.
When it comes to visitor spending, according to the U.S. Travel Association, Vermont is second to last in growth in visitor spending, and we've lost market share in the last 5 years compared to other New England states. During the same period, while many other competing states have bolstered their tourism marketing spending, Vermont has decreased its spending by 6% over the last 5 years. The economic vitality of Vermont is dependent on a strong tourism industry, and we can't risk losing any more visitor spending.
Secretary Lindsay Curley of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, whose agency includes the Department of Tourism, was also hopeful the additional revenue for marketing and promoting the state could be found.
They're asking for an increase in tourism funding, and the really difficult job the legislators have is to figure out, if we're not raising fees or taxes, where does that money come from? So, I know they have a tough job, but I think this is a really important industry, and I think today it was a great showcase of what we have to offer here in our state.
On the way out, we caught up with Berta McGinnis, Anthony McLaurin, and Lana Halbin, all of whom have been active in the local tourism scene in the North Shire.
We gave them something to think about.
I think, as they stated in the end, they make policy. They don't appropriate funds. I think that this particular committee of 11 understand the problems. And if they didn't understand before, I think they understand now.
Impressing voices from throughout the state that made the point that you can't afford not to make this investment in this state now.
Yeah, excellent presentations. I think they're balancing budgets too. That's the big issue. One of the questions was, where do we take this out of? Which is an interesting question.
And loaded.
Whether the industry leaders who showed up in Montpelier were successful at tipping enough legislators to view additional tourism spending as an investment that will more than pay for itself, as opposed to money that either can't be afforded or has to come from somewhere else, is a question that will be answered later in the session when the coming year's budget is scrutinized. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.